Hi, my name is Hannah, and today we're interviewing Indhran Indhraseghar. Indhran is a recognized expert in storytelling and marketing. Today he gives us his view on business and economic trends as the curve flattens and we emerge into a post-pandemic world.
This podcast channel is about you, successful international entrepreneurs, successful expats, successful investors. Sponsored by HCJ.tax.
And Indhran, hi, how are you today? Thank you very much for your time. I know you're a super busy guy.
Thank you for taking your the time and the trouble to do this. So just give you a bit of a background. Before that, did you get a chance to watch the webinar link that I sent you some time back?
Thank you, Tariq, for the great introduction, and I really am excited to be with all of you guys. You guys are dialing in from all over the world, and it must be different time zones for you. So I appreciate your time and your effort, and I'm going to do my best to make this worth your while.
20 years experience in sales, marketing, branding. I did a very large branding program for 33,000 employees, serving 80 million customers worldwide in HSBC. When I was in HSBC, it was a global branding program, and I was in basically Canary Wharf in London, in Hyderabad in India, and also here in Malaysia, right? So once that was done, then I went to Australia to do my migration. I was migrating to Australia at the time, right? He was on page 1. He got to page 1 of Google, right? And I was like, wow, this is amazing, right? So I guessed, I wondered why, and I guess one of the reasons is basically Google had just bought YouTube at the time, and they were fixing all the algorithms for video, right? And this guy was so thoughtful and so ahead of the curve that he started recording video content, and they were so hungry for video content, so they started putting that up. But also, one of the things was this was a heavy, emotionally strong story, right? There was a story there. And I looked at the video again, and I understood that he had used some storytelling techniques, which unconsciously, right? And I had also edited with some. I had used some storytelling techniques to when I was creating the video. So what happened was, I said, "Wow, I got to something," So he didn't pay me very much. So it wasn't like a life-changing amount that I got paid, because I was massively in debt, okay? But it was a life-changing moment, because I realized I could replicate this again and again and again, So
I think we have a fair sense of your background. So I would appreciate you taking the time to bring us up to speed. So obviously we are in the midst of a situation that is unprecedented. And I think that's putting it mildly, to be honest. So given your vast international experience and exposure, I'm wondering, how do you think what has happened will change the way we do business going forward?
I don't know if this is something that I can answer completely. And the cards are still, and the jury's still out in that sense, right? But I would certainly say that this is the 9/11 of the health 9/11, and it's also the business 9/11, in the sense that the supply chain 9/11, right? This is not. For example, after 9/11, airport security changed forever.
Absolutely.
So this is the 9/11 that's going to change things forever. And people have said that the last time we saw something like this was during World War II. So really, this is, and I was just reading the other day about the the US and how they are viewing this, and basically it's a fight, it's a war against the coronavirus, right? It's a war. So they're mobilizing the army, they're mobilizing the team. They've ordered an additional 100,000 body bags. This is the scope and the scale of how the world is changing. So post-corona, I would certainly think that we will never go back to the way things were. So to come back to your point of view, I would say that, let me give you an example, and I use it in my webinar, right? So the game Monopoly, I'm sure you've played it before, right? Okay, so the game Monopoly was invented during the Great Depression, when people had no money, and they had to stay home all day because they couldn't go out and spend money, and they were really bored, right? So, and another reason is because it was a Great Depression, people literally had no money, right? So they couldn't even touch cash, and the Monopoly gave them the psychological feeling of owning property, living out a fantasy. So that game of Monopoly, today, over 1 billion people have played Monopoly, and they have sold 250 million sets alone. Forget about the online version and the games that they have created, right? Just physical sets, 250 million. Now, that was born out of a crisis during the Great Depression. So what's going to happen post-corona? We're going to see things like this, things where completely new business models being created, completely new ways. And for example, one of the things, because I'm more and more in the training space now, so I hear about how the training business has been affected, because training is traditionally a face-to-face type of thing. And for the most part, many people, like in the accounting world, they don't want to go virtual. They don't feel, they want to get, if it's a receipt, they want the physical copy of that receipt. They want, if it's a document, they want the signed, stamped version for their record. And that's what the tax office wants to see, right? They don't want to see a photo, right? They don't trust it. So similarly, in a face-to-face environment when you're training, you have the similar challenges, right? And so I'm affected. I've moved online and trying to survive in some way with that. But the people who are really, really, really affected are those people who do what is called team building, right? Where they take, all the employees, whether it's 100 people or whatever, they go into a retreat somewhere and they do these very, very physical contact exercises. Now, your income during coronavirus lockdown period is zero for something like that, right? So how do you innovate? How do you actually do something different? So a couple of them are actually saying, hang on a minute, let's look at what is engaging people today. So what's engaging people today? A lot of them have gone to video games, have gone to these massive online gaming platforms, right? So what if we do some team building within those platforms? What if we create like virtual worlds where they can go in and do stuff like that, right? So these are some of the things that I see from here. Because of these challenges, people are going to be very, very resourceful, and they're going to try to adapt their business model. But it's not just chalk and talk, as they say, right? So it's just not putting myself into a video camera putting myself into a video camera and doing the same thing with an audience that is on the other side of the screen. No, that kind of stuff is not what is required. What is required is what I just told you, right? Really rethinking the entire thing, looking at what is working online now, and understanding how I can fit a value proposition that will make sense to my clients. So that is what I'm helping people today. That is what I'm helping them. I've got a Facebook group, because after the crisis hit, I saw a lot of people are suffering, and they are now in a big problem, because, like many people, they have got the income has dropped by 50%, 30%. Some of them no income. That's it, right? Especially if they're self-employed. So how do we help these people? I set up a free Facebook group where I give group coaching, where I give help. And today, incidentally, in about 2 hours, or rather really 1.5 hours from now, I'm doing a group coaching session within the Facebook group. And these are people from all over the world. You know, they may be from Tunisia, from Barcelona, from Seoul, from Korea, Indonesia, you know, like all Malaysia, Singapore, all over the world, right?
Right. So just going back to the question, in terms of how business is changing, to summarize what you've been saying. So training and development, definitely more online. Business interaction in general, definitely more online. Any other ways in which you see business evolving in the post-pandemic world?
Yeah, I think the way that we handle biohazard security, the way we handle the way that we actually the way that we behave, right? The way that we behave. So the reason I'm saying this is because when you look at a habit is formed after doing something for, I think Oxford did a study, they say after 21 days, but Oxford did a study that if you do something for 67 days, right? If you do something consistently for 67 days, you it will become a habit. It will be a permanent habit for you, right? Now, so if you are doing a lockdown and you are working from home for months on end, okay, from now on, the company is going to say, hang on a minute, why do I need to pay rent for this expensive office when I got the same level of productivity from my employees working at home, because they've adapted new virtual ways of connecting. So the company will say, hey, you know what? You know, guys, you've been working from home last 3 months or 6 months or whatever while this pandemic has been going. You know what? What do you guys want to do? You want to come back to the office, or you want to stay? I'll give you guys the option. So what will happen is that some people will say, you know what, I want to come back to the office. Some people will say, no, I don't. But in any case, the company, after a while, they'll say, you know what, we had a 100 chairs in our office. Now we only need 30. So they will downsize. They might leave their current tenant, and they might actually go into a co-working space, for example.
Right, so that has implications for commercial real estate. It has implications for serviced offices, co-working spaces. But, you know, these are trends that have been happening before. So even before the pandemic, there was a slowdown in commercial real estate in many business districts. The co-working business model post-WeWork was also being challenged. So I can see that being exacerbated. Anywhere else you think there may be changes?
Well, generally in the healthcare sector, certainly a lot of change, because right now what's happening is they're retooling. There's going to be some amazing changes moving forward, because a lot of attention has been focused on the different things that make a difference, right? So like when we go, like I was reading, one of the main reasons, right, that one of the key reasons in Italy, where they had such a huge coronavirus thing, was that the mayors of certain cities like Rome and I think it was Florence, right, because they had this, you know, they were associating, they were these racist comments to the Chinese people, because the coronavirus came from China, right? So the mayors of the cities, right, to counter that racism, they started this campaign called "Hug a Chinese a Day," right? So
which made it worse,
yeah. So people were walking in the streets and started hugging random Chinese people in obviously without masks or anything, right? So obviously that after the thing became a huge pandemic, and thousands of people started dying. Obviously, they stopped that as soon as they could. But this is the kind of stuff, right? And the other thing that they did in Spain that made it really, really bad was that, they allowed this huge football match where thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, right, were like sitting very close to each other watching Liverpool play, right, in Spain. And 3 weeks earlier, health officers already knew this pandemic was very, very, very contagious and it's really dangerous, right? But they still, 3 weeks after knowing that, they still let this huge game go on, right? So things like this kind of stuff there will be a huge change. So in terms of the systemic, so what's happening now is you can see the systemic weaknesses of governments, the systemic weaknesses of organizations are being brought to light.
Well, I'm not sure if it's a point about systemic weaknesses, but it's more because I'm looking at the example you gave and I'm trying to say, okay, from that example, how can we derive a principle? And if I had to phrase it in terms of a principle, I would say social distancing is here to stay. So in the sense that if a mayor in the future were to say, go have a random planet X, you're going to say, well, before 2020 we would do that, but probably not now. Or if we have a mass spectator event, perhaps the seating arrangements would be a bit more spacey.
Absolutely. And number one. Number two is the country that's done the best. The country has done the best so far in terms of tackling this virus. Okay, has been Korea and Taiwan. Okay. Now, if you look at Korea, the Korean government is my client, and if you look at Korea, the reason why they are doing so well is because they had systems in place after the SARS outbreak, after the MERS outbreak. They got hit hard, right? So and they are just on China's doorstep, and which is the sad to say, this is the birthing place of most of the viruses that we've seen the world has seen. So because they're on China's doorstep and they can't really get away from it, they've developed a very, very effective system, right? Singapore is another one where the system, right? So the reason why the UK, the US, Europe is suffering so badly is because of their systemic problems, right? So social distancing is, I agree with you, is one thing, but the other thing is that the whole policies in place to handle this is not in those countries, right? And
well, again,
you will see the US.
If I can challenge that a bit, I would phrase it in a different way. I guess having, just like yourself, lived in both the East and the West, that the issue is one of civil liberties and human rights. Whereas in the places, in South Korea, at 4 o'clock every day, everyone just stops to sing the national anthem. Worker rights aren't what we know them to be. In Singapore, by law, your body is the property of the state. So that has a lot of implications. The democracy is not what we know it in the West. Therefore, if a government is to encroach on freedoms, it's a big deal. Whereas in the countries that you've cited, that's everyday stuff. So the point I'm trying to say, right, is like from now you asked me about the world post Corona, right? How it's going to be, and my point of view is that the systemic the systems, right? I'm not so much talking about freedom here, right? Freedom is not so much what I'm talking about. That Korea has a system. The system of being very, very transparent in their government, where they do this contact tracing very effectively. Their speed for this kind of things is very effective because their people are trained, right? Like for example, in the US, you will find that if there's a fire or an emergency situation like FEMA, they will just get on it. They're all over it, right? Because they're trained, but they're not
So just like that, the Koreans are trained from all these previous viral pandemics. They're trained. They've got a system in place. Singapore is the same. They've got this color-coded system in place where, and stuff, where it's really. But Europe doesn't have this. And post-corona, they are going to have it.
Right. So that's and that's a good point, because that is very much right now. We have allegedly. I'm not an epidemiologist, but just from what's being reported in the news just today, we're past the peak in certain Western countries. So that's a good thing, in that they're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. And the issue of civil liberties is coming up. So the system, so for example, if in Taiwan and Korea, they're using your cell phone as part of contact tracing, they don't need to ask you, because by using the proximity features of your phone, they know who you've been in contact with. So that, in order for that system to be instituted in the West, you will have to sacrifice civil liberties, because that is against the law. And similarly, in Singapore, contact tracing, it's all online, and they can tell you to stay indoors, and they can enforce it by jail sentences and stuff like that. That is against the law. And in China, I guess another one where you have a bracelet which shows what your health status is, laws will have to be passed to make that possible. And you can't, a government just can't institute that. So I agree with you that this is a debate that's happening right now. And at the end of it, you've already seen some encroachment on civil liberties in certain states.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And it may continue post as well. As it did
I agree.
The example you raised earlier with 9/11. So
with
9/11, there were certain rules and policies and procedures around security, and we've gone to the next level, and that has led to invasion of personal privacy as a result of the Patriot Act in the US and certain anti-terrorism legislation in the UK, just to give an example. So I'm agreeing with you. With you, but I'm saying, in order for the systems that you indicate to come into play, legislation and rules or our notion of civil liberties and freedoms would need to be revisited.
Yeah. Yes. And the other thing about systemic that I'm talking about is the healthcare system. Mm-hmm. So a lot of government, they've been focusing on different things, and now they realize that they don't have enough of this, they don't have enough of that. I know, for example, the biggest challenge now is that there's not enough test kits for the doctors and healthcare workers, because if they're not enough, they are too busy working, they're not being able to be tested frequently, regularly. Mm-hmm. And the last thing you want is to go in as a healthy patient, right? And then the doctor or the nurse infects you, which is what happened in Malaysia, where there's this person who went to the Islamic mosque gathering, right? A large-scale gathering, and he was embarrassed or something. He denied telling anyone that he went for that gathering, right? When he said, come forward, all those who went for that gathering, come forward. Because what had happened was, I believe there was 15,000 people at that gathering. And after that gathering was over, the people who left, they went back to Brunei, to Singapore, and to these countries, and they got sick, and they got tested, and they were like, where have you been? I was at this gathering, right? So the Malaysian government got wind that this gathering had this COVID-19, and so it said, okay, everyone out of the 15,000, 16,000, everyone please come out. And not everyone came out. That's the thing, right? For voluntary testing. And one of them was this doctor, okay? And he eventually got sick after denying that he actually had anything to do with it. And meanwhile, the people in his clinic, the nurses got sick, his patients, it's that kind of stuff. Now, this is a doctor who knowingly did it, right? Mm-hmm. But what about doctors who unknowingly are infecting their patients? Mm-hmm. So the healthcare system needs to, now there's an acute shortage of ventilators and this and that, right? And I was talking to somebody, and where there are governments who actually prohibit the export of masks or ventilators. They want it for their own people.
Yeah,
There are many cases now.
Yeah, that's a growing thing, not just with the Europeans, the Americans. I think China is perhaps ironically the only country that's still actively exporting medical devices, where everyone is trying to cut back and hold it for their own people. So that is also an important point. Indhran, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. I know you said it you're super busy right now, and thank you for giving us food for thought. I've been speaking to a lot of people as we continue this series, and you're the first person to have brought up or pointed in the direction of the civil liberties issue. So that is especially for those of us in the West where certain so-called freedoms are sacrosanct. It is something that is very personal and something to be considered. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Take care.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.